Welcome to the Leadership in Law podcast with host Marilyn Jenkins. Cut through the noise, get actionable insights and inspiring stories delivered straight to your ears. Your ultimate podcast for navigating the ever-changing world of law firm ownership. In each episode, we dive deep into the critical topics that matter most to you, from unlocking explosive growth to building a thriving team. We connect you with successful firm leaders and industry experts who share their proven strategies and hard-won wisdom. So, whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting your journey as a law firm owner, the Leadership in Law podcast is here to equip you with the knowledge and tools you need to build a successful and fulfilling legal practice.
Hello, everyone. Thank you and welcome to another episode of the Leadership in Law podcast. I'm your host, Marilyn Jenkins. Please join me in welcoming my guest, Sarah Soucie Eyberg, to the show today. Sarah is the principal attorney of Soucie Eyberg Law, LLC, practicing exclusively in the area of Social Security disability law. Her dedication to professional excellence, development, and service knows practically no bounds. Just ask her husband. She is a member of several local and statewide legal organizations and serves in leadership roles in nearly every organization. She is a runner, knitter, deer hunter, mother, wife, and attorney, living just outside the Twin Cities with her husband, Jason, and 4 children, Esme, Mina, Roland, and Walter. Hopefully I said all those correctly. Her cat and chickens. When she's not working, she can be found at home with her family, trying new recipes or passing on her love of reading to her kids. She's also passing on all of her nerdy fandoms to her kids, including Doctor Who, the Marvel Universe, all things Halloween, and more. I'm excited to have you here, Sarah. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I always, we write the bios to kind of get across a little bit of who we are, but it's really, I don't often listen to somebody read it out loud right next to me. So it's hard to listen to sometimes.
I loved it. It's so interesting. So not a lot of Americans are into Doctor Who. So I loved hearing that you're into Doctor Who.
So that's the one. I did have clients say, we hired you because you mentioned Doctor Who in your bio. It works when you're authentic that way. And I think any ways that our clients can find us more like humans makes the whole process better.
I absolutely agree. And I would have added Taylor Swift to all of that. But anyway.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Sometimes when I help teach a lawyer as business owner class at our law school here, Mitchell Hamlin. And one of the things that I tell students is really lean into your authenticity. And sometimes clients, if it's not something that people are always afraid, oh, what if somebody doesn't like that? I'm like, good. You don't want them to be your client if they don't like things, like that about you or things that are important to you.
That's true. Exactly. You want to have people that have the same values and type of thing with you. And I know that customer service and authenticity is important to you. So let's back up and talk about how you got started. I know that you niched down right away, which is very interesting and should be something that a lot of people look at. How did you get started?
So I have kind of a winding path to having my own firm because I think that's a lot of people end up that way. I graduated law school in 2011. For anybody who graduated around then or between 2008 and 2011, it was tough, right? There were not a lot of jobs and the economy was really bad. And it was very hard to find actual practicing law work. I was very fortunate that through one of the organizations that I was already a part of as a law student, I met an attorney with a Social Security disability law practice. And I met him in August after I graduated and started working for them in, I think, October of that year. And I had never had a single administrative law class in law school. If you had asked me, that would have been at the very bottom of my list. It wasn't something that I had planned on at all, but it was the job that was available. I really liked the work. It allows me to help people who can't afford legal services because we work on contingency. So I don't have to worry about charging retainer or billing people hourly or not being able to help someone because they couldn't pay. And then I also, I grew up with an attorney for a father who owned his own practice. He practiced in the area of personal injury. And so helping people through, really catastrophic and painful times is something that I was pretty familiar with and very interested in. And so that's kind of how I ended up doing Social Security disability. It wasn't a great fit at that law firm, which is something I am fairly open about, and something I think that is a little bit hard for new lawyers starting out to determine, because you don't know what is maybe a toxic work environment versus what is just hard work in a challenging profession. And I ended up walking away from that job without anything else to do. And that was probably the scariest thing I've ever done, besides until I started my law firm. But
now, were you a mom at that time? Were you married?
No, I was married. I married a fellow law student. We married in spring break, our third year in law school, which I don't recommend if anybody's listening. Like, that's just a bad idea. If you're a law student and you're listening, just, give yourself some time. So we got married, graduated, took the bar, got those first legal jobs, and we were kind of off to the races. After I left that law firm, I started working for the State Bar Association in their recruitment and retention and marketing section. And it was there that I got pregnant with twins. And that really changed the course kind of my career for, I think, a lot of reasons. I think most parents can relate that you just don't know until you get there what kind of impact that's going to have for you. And we don't have great supports, not just in our profession, but kind of society for working families. Childcare for 2 infants was essentially my take home, And so after about a year at the Bar Association, we had some, my mom was helping us when the twins were really little. We had a part-time nanny, and that didn't work out. Then we had a friend who also had a baby taking care of our kids. And I'm eternally grateful for that, because I wouldn't have been able to work otherwise, because it was just really affordable for us. But that didn't, at one point stopped working for them when my twins were, I think, maybe 13 months old. And so we did the math, and the math was not mathing to get us to, I didn't want to work 40 hours a week for someone else to take care of my kids and to, and that's no shade on anybody who would rather continue their career. Because if you think about some of the financial penalty, if you're leaving the workforce to stay home with kids, you're not paying into Social Security, you're maybe not paying into retirement, things like that can have a really negative impact. And so I was not thinking about 60 years from then. I just was thinking about what my family needed in the moment. And that was for me to step back. That was also terrifying, because I spent years getting to this point where I had a law degree, and I always planned on working. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and took care of us really wonderfully. But I was like, well, I'm pursuing education. I'm going to get this professional job, and I'm going to be a working mom. And then when I got there, I was like, man, this sucks. I felt torn. I felt like I wasn't doing a good enough job for my babies. I felt like I wasn't doing a good enough job at work. And it was hard. So I stepped back and I left the workforce, but I still continued to do some work on the side. So I wasn't necessarily a working mom. I wasn't really a stay-at-home mom, because I did both. And so that was a weird liminal place to be too. I was doing contract work for other social security disability firms. So I would show up to the hearing for them, do the hearing for their client. I do the thumbs up again. Sorry. I told you I gesture a lot. It's going to be hard. So I would do the hearing, I would get paid a flat fee, and then I would go home, and I didn't have to do I didn't have to have any firm infrastructure. I didn't have to do a lot of the hand-holding for clients and things like that. So it was just, other than the travel to get there and then reviewing the file and things, it was a pretty low intensity in terms of the work. That was great. And it worked really well for our family for, I think I did that for 7 or 8 years.
Oh, wow.
The pandemic came, and all of the in-person hearings shut down overnight.
Right.
And the company that I had been working for all those years, and I was an independent contractor, I was not an employee. They had this policy where if a hearing doesn't move forward for any reason, either the claimant doesn't show up or the hearing office can't do it, I still get paid my fee, because I showed up, I was ready to go, I did all the prep, and it wasn't my fault. So I fulfilled all the parts of my contract, I still get paid. If there was a hearing that canceled within a week, I still got at least a partial payment because, of course, I've still done some of the work. When the pandemic came along, that company, I had it was more like 5 hearings, I think, that week. And everyone was scrambling. Nobody knew how hearing offices were going to do this. It's Social Security, and they were not super organized and not communicative. So I continued to do the work and show up to make sure that if the hearing could move forward, it would. I did extra work to try and get clients to e-sign documents, to consent to telephone hearings, all these kinds of things. And then most of those hearings didn't go forward. And then the company put out a statement or whatever that they were not going to pay for hearings that didn't go forward. And that felt really unfair to me. And I got really angry and just pissed. And I looked at my husband and was like, you know what? I'm just going to start my own firm. I'm not going to let my compensation, be at the mercy of anybody else anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm fed up with it.
Nice.
And yeah. So I like to say I started my law firm out of spite.
Because we just need that little push to make it happen,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is terrifying. And I didn't know how to run a business. Nobody teaches you how to do that in law school. I was terrified, mostly to fail. I was really, really afraid to fail. And I'm sure that is a feeling that a lot of people listening, I mean, if you've gone all the way to being a lawyer, you're probably also afraid to fail and used to being successful. And
true. And it's imposter syndrome. I mean, all of that plays into it. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't realize until I started my own firm how little other people who had firms knew about running a law firm. They just also were just doing it. So that helped a little bit. And then I joined the Lawyerist, which is a really popular, great small firm business coaching organization. And that was like the best investment that I made, because then I was being taught how to do some of these things. And I felt like I had training wheels on a little bit. And also, it helped to be in the pandemic where, okay, all the other obligations have fallen away for a little while, other than online schooling my kids. There wasn't anywhere to go or anywhere to be because everybody was staying home. So I was able to really intensely focus on putting together a firm that is tech forward and really client centered.
Wow. That's interesting. A really positive outcome of the lockdown.
Yeah, it felt weird. And after, so my kids were in first grade when the twins were. Walter was not yet in school, so the twins were in first grade. My oldest, Esme, is my stepdaughter, so she was doing a lot of first schooling at her mom's and was with us part of the time. But they sent them home on spring break. And I remember being like, oh, this is going to stink because, what am I going to do with these kids for their whole spring break? We usually go to the zoo and the museum. We can't do all this stuff. What am I going to do with them for a week at home? And then they just never went back.
And it turned into 3 months, right? It was just months and months.
Mm-hmm. And then we elected for their second grade year. As in Minnesota, they were doing like a hybrid, like go a couple days, come back. Home a couple days so they could like keep people in smaller pods and clean every day and whatever. And I was just like, I don't want to add that stress. So we kept them home. So in my office where I am now, we had desks and their little, like all their stuff. So I would be like doing Zooms and meetings and things like that. And they would be doing school in the background. So that was a little bit harder, but still I'm really thankful because it was really like a crucible to try and get a lot of this stuff done. And for a law firm, and I don't know, I would never go back now. Like I can't imagine working for somebody else. And I absolutely love so much about building a business. Sometimes I love the business of law more than the practice. And that is a real big surprise to me because it was just never something I wanted to do. And
that's interesting to know that you like that part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you're completely virtual, except when you actually have to show up to sign documents and stuff. And you were talking about that you did set up a tech forward firm. Can you elaborate on what you obviously Zoom is a big part of it, but can you elaborate a little bit more on how you get clients and what you do for your clients in a virtual environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a disability practice, sometimes having the technology and people not having to come into an office, it makes the services more accessible to them because they have bad pain days. We can do phone conferences from their bed. They don't have to feel like they're on, right? For folks who have chronic pain or chronic fatigue or things like that. Are you familiar with the spoon theory at all?
No.
So there's this theory that you can divide their energy up maybe like 5 spoons a day. And once those spoons are gone, they are gone and they cannot function after that. And you can't save up spoons really to go into they don't roll over very well. And sometimes you can get away and sometimes you can borrow from the next day, but then it just continues on. So it's this finite number. And once it's gone, it's gone. And so with that, like, if I can lessen the spoons it takes to meet with me, that's really helpful for my clients. I use case management software. Obviously, most of us do. It's very helpful. But within that are automations that help us run our firm better. I have 2 VAs that are both based out of the Philippines, and one is full-time and the other is part-time. And I actually am looking into getting a 3rd full-time VA just because we just have a lot to do. We have a lot of clients.
Nice.
Yeah. And when I started my firm, I was like, I'm going to be a true solo. I don't want to manage staff. I don't want to like be responsible for that. What if I do fail and then they're out of a job too? Just all the things. But I can't imagine doing it without my assistant, Aki. Now she is like a huge part of the team. And the other fear with hiring people is I never have the expectation that someone else is going to care about my work and what I'm trying to do as much as I do. It's just, like, especially like my business, like that's not their responsibility. I expect them to, I want them to have the same values and care and for us all to be pulling in the same direction. But almost immediately, Aki had that for our firm, and she deeply cares about the people that we're helping and what we're trying to do. And I am forever grateful for having met her, for having her on, and I would do just about anything to make sure she stays with us. So
that's what I call an A player. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
I found that there's some really amazing A players in the Philippines, and I have 2 of them. I team all over the world, 2 from the Philippines. And you're right. I mean, there's 2 things that I realized when hiring is there's always someone that wants to do the thing you don't want to do. And then, hire personality and drive and teach the job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, and I think that attorneys fall into this, especially people with brick and mortar offices. It's hard for them to conceptualize how they could have a true helpful assistant that's remote. And it's just, that's just not been my experience. It's been really, really helpful. And the other thing is that you're able to find people who are invested and like care about the mission, as long as you're hiring in the right way. So, but I did all the wrong things, like I had been really psyched. I probably needed somebody about a year before I finally hired Aki. I got like a list of people and I looked and I was like, well, I'll interview this one and this one. And then I interviewed Aki, and like in the interview, I was like, well, when do you want to start? Just like, everybody's not hired yet and is thinking about it. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. You're supposed to hire slow and then fire when it's not a good fit. Don't wait, So there's some divine intervention there, or something that made that work well. Or actually, I'm trying to be better about this too. I am creating an environment where I'm attracting that that right fit, and I do think that, especially for never having been a boss before, I think that I do a good job. Part of our client-centered piece and our core values as a firm is to empower our clients, but I also feel that with my staff. Like Aki is really good. If you look at my firm social media, that's all her. She does all of those things. When I didn't ask for her help getting a slide deck for a presentation that I did on Monday because I just didn't do it until Monday morning. I was like on a different Zoom with the law student for that class that I helped teach and trying to work on it also while I'm talking to him about his final business plan. And then all of a sudden I could like see in like the little like slide previews, like different things moving around. She was like in my presentation. She working on it on camera. She's like, let me help you with this because that's so bad. I can do the substance, but I like the design stuff it's just not, my forte. Like obviously I like bright colors. I have like style. I do not have graphic design talent whatsoever.
I see that in Canva when I'm trying to do something in Canva, and then they're like and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do something else because they're so much better at it than me.
Like, this is not a good use. And so one of the things that we try to do is really make good use of our time and our talents. And when I hired Aki, I made a list of stuff that I didn't want to do, and that's what I handed off to her. when we hired the second assistant, I said, what are some things that you don't want to do anymore because you're doing so much other substantive work? Like, she's essentially a paralegal at this point. She does initial applications. I think she could easily do appeals, and that's all permissible under our practice rules for Social Security. It doesn't have to be an attorney doing those with the clients. She has a lot of client contacts. She does a lot of our automations, which is part of being tech forward. Before I had people, I put in place some automation. So email templates and things that would just go out for people listening that maybe haven't done this yet. A calendar scheduling app, like I use Calendly, but really any of them, I saved immediately 5 to 7 hours, probably just not replying back and forth with people, trying to find gaps in my schedule.
Right.
And then potentially double booking yourself or giving someone a list of times. And then by the time they get back to you, they're all gone. You know, all of that immediately off my plate. That was a huge kind of game changer for me.
Right.
And I also previously I had Smith AI to answer our phones for a while. And then Aki took that over because it was less expensive. We don't have such a call volume that we need to worry about. A receptionist in our firm can also be doing other things. So she answered incoming calls and then would do other work as calls were coming in. The reason we got a second assistant though is because for Social Security with the field offices, I mean, you're waiting on hold sometimes 20 minutes just to talk to somebody. And so we really needed somebody who could do those outgoing calls that wasn't worried about doing other work or having to answer incoming calls as well.
Okay. Yeah.
Other thing that I really like just on the tech forward piece is Trello. It's Trello. It is a project management sort of software. I was trying to make the task management in Locus, my case management software, work for me because it was in there. I don't like adding on tech if I have something that will already do that same job. And I tried like through automations. I tried through my own discipline to make it work for me, but I felt overwhelmed. I was feeling like my day was controlled by my email inbox and that I wasn't able to plan ahead. I didn't feel like I had my arms around everything that needed to be done. And I was very anxious about things falling through the cracks. Trello helps us visualize everything and we're able to move things around. Both my assistants, we're in it all day. They log phone calls in there. We log appeal deadlines. We log contacts with clients. We log all of our hearing preparation, medical record requests. Everything lives in Trello. And then the actual like client information lives in our case management software.
So you have stages on your board and you have a card per client and
Yep. And then Trello also allows us to do multiple boards. So we have one for KPIs. So we keep track of our income and other KPIs there. We have one that's like goals and we have one that's celebrations so that we're making sure we're acknowledging those things. We have one for our social media marketing as well. So I can say, hey, I want to do an Instagram post for Indigenous Peoples Day. And then Aki will draw it up. And she used to send it to me for approval first, but now I'm just like, just post it. I know you're going to do a good job. So there's that. And then Loom is another one that really helps with remote staff because I'm able to screen record whatever I'm doing and then send it to them. And then they can screen record to show me things that they're having trouble with. It's super easy. And then it just lives in a library. So now when we have new people join the team, we can say, watch these videos to know how to do these tasks and let us know if you have any questions.
Do you ever feel like the end of the year is racing towards you and you're not quite where you want to be revenue-wise? With only a few months left, the pressure to make significant strides can be overwhelming. I get it. Balancing growth, managing a team, and chasing those big goals can leave you feeling stuck or unsure. It's a common struggle and you don't have to navigate it alone. That's why I'm offering a free strategy call. Together, we'll identify the specific hurdles you're facing and develop a personalized marketing plan to drive real results. This is your opportunity to turn those challenges into achievements and set yourself up for a powerful year end. Picture this. December arrives and you look back on a year where you achieved more than you thought possible. How would that make you feel? This call is your chance to make that vision a reality. Don't let another day pass by without taking action. Nothing changes until you change it. Are you ready to see what's possible? Click the link in the show notes to book your free discovery call with me now. Let's work together to make these last few months your most impactful yet. Let's seize this opportunity and finish the year strong. I'm here to help you make it happen.
So you're using Loom to create SOPs, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I've used that as well with my team. And then, but you're talking about the things you don't want to do. We have a thing that we do on Fridays is we call it the 5 questions to clarity. And,
Oh,
and it's the exact same thing. What am I doing that I like to do? What am I doing that I shouldn't be doing, but I like to do? What am I doing that I don't like to do? And if you keep track of what you're doing each week, then it's easier to offload what you don't, because there's always someone in life that likes to do what you don't like to do.
yeah. Yeah. And it might surprise you who that is. I love that. I'm going to steal that, I think, and start doing that on Fridays.
It's great. It's a good idea to kind of, and especially if you're getting to the point where you're ready to grow and you want to replace like something Aki's doing or something, have her do the same thing, compare notes. Now you know exactly what your next person is going to be doing.
Job description is already written. Yeah, I love that. I think we're going to start doing that. I think that checking in on what we're doing, it's really easy to lose sight of where you want to end up if you're just constantly in the trenches. And I think that a lot, especially small firm owners, are in the trenches all the time because not only do you have to practice law, it turns out you have to do all these other things to keep your law firm going. And it's really hard to balance and find time for all of it. And it's hard to make that time for checking in on your goals, checking in on, where everybody is temperature wise. But if you don't do that, then you'll start to have problems. Like you said, like you get staff that are like unfulfilled by their work and they're going to start looking for something else. Or you have potential interpersonal problems between people and you miss it because you're just too busy with your head down. So, and you also you can't see where you're going if you have your head down all the time. And I am always surprised at how much things shift for me from a goal setting or, interest perspective. Like when I started my firm, I did not think about growth. I wanted to make enough money to keep my family comfortable and do a good job for my clients and keep the firm going. And that was it. And now that we're I guess almost 5 years in now, I feel like my britches are getting a little bigger and I'm kind of ready for that next challenge. And I think that for people who have that entrepreneurial spirit, you need to be having that challenge that you're trying to reach. Because once you get to a good place, a plateau, you start to get bored maybe or uninterested. Yeah. And so having that kind of vision to look forward is really helpful. But it's not having.
Exactly. I think what you're saying is having enough time or specific time to work on your business as opposed to in it, so you can see the future and decide where you want to go.
Yes. Yep.
That makes a huge difference. So now being virtual and I love the way you've got your system set up. How do you get new clients? I know that you do your networking and all this kind of stuff. What is it that you're doing to grow your firm?
Yeah. So a few different things. Networking is a big piece of it. I'm a member of the plaintiffs bar in Minnesota, which is mainly personal injury and work comp attorneys, med mal, wrongful death, those kinds of cases. Really any civil attorney or people who represent people can join, but it tends to be very personal injury heavy. I consider Social Security disability to be PI adjacent is what I call it, because we share a lot of the same clients and a lot of the same issues. And a lot of people who are injured in accidents later on aren't able to return to work. The same goes kind of for work comp attorneys. It helps to have an understanding of that. And we share a lot of the same clients again. So that's a really big referral source for me, especially because those guys, they do a lot with their clients and they spend a lot of time with them. And they care a lot about the people, and their businesses are based on that good client service and referrals and things like that. So when they hand off a client to an SSDI attorney, they want to know that client's being taken care of. And I'm able to offer that. Most of the SSDI firms, there are some of us that are solo or small firm owners, but lots of the people that are in this game are huge national firms with thousands and thousands of clients. And they're not going to get that personal experience going to that. And so from one of the things that we talk about, especially with the law students as they're developing their business plan, is the marketplace need and then differentiating your offerings. And so I happen to, most of the even solo and small firm owners in my area are older white men. And so I kind of differentiate just by existence. So that works for me. And I kind of, I'm very you can see on my website, I am very intentional. There's a lot of pictures of me And it's very obvious that this is a woman-owned firm. A lot of the design of my website is meant to get away from the kind of stodgy columns and gavels and, scales of justice. Like, we don't want that. And I was very intentional about choosing colors that were softer. I love purple, so that's why I did purple, but softer and fonts that were a little bit softer too. I think when I was having this discussion with the logo designer, I said I want it to be feminine but powerful, because I wanted to lean into who I am. And so a lot of my marketing is aimed at that authenticity. And then
I did love the colors. Yeah, I mean, the colors, it's just great to see the bright colors. It does have a completely different feel.
Yeah. And so we have a lot of that in our social media marketing as well. We're just really pushing for this sort of feminine kind of strength, because, if you don't want an attorney who's a woman, I want you to self-select out early. You don't want an attorney who is younger, then I think self-select out early also, because I don't spend a lot of time trying to convince potential clients that I know what I'm doing,
Right.
and because I think that that's important, and I'm very good at establishing trust in a quick manner, but I'm just not going to beg for your business. There's a lot of other firms out there that you can talk to, and I already have a lot of clients. So I do invest in the Thomson Reuters, super lawyer profiles, because I was recognized for that, and clients care about things like that.
Right.
But the big piece, the reason that I make that investment, and that's about my only marketing spend at this point, is because they do a lot of the Google SEO that I would need to worry about anyway. I track. This is the other thing too that's really important. If you have your own firm, or if you're in charge of marketing in any sort of way, you got to ask people how they found you, because it doesn't make sense to spend, $2,000 on ads if you don't know if they're working. And I think that some people get nervous and put the money out there and then forget to look at what's coming in. So the majority of we get referrals in Google. And I know that the Google piece is that Thomson Reuters super lawyer profile, which is, people have different beliefs about it. The PI attorneys really care about it. So that helps, with the referrals also, and clients really care about it. I'm less concerned about being a super lawyer, I guess.
Well, it makes sense that they handle the SEO part of that. Now, I did see that you have a Google business profile, and being virtual, you don't have your address on there, which is fine. Are you using Google Tag Manager on your website and your Google business profile so you know what's coming through there? And okay, so that's part of your reporting and tracking.
Yes, yeah, it is. And also, so when folks, we have a line in our intake that asks everybody, and then I get the reports from the Google My Business and keep track of who's going to the website, who's actually clicking through, and try and see who's engaging with us that way. I do get people who want an attorney because I'm in Andover. So for people who don't know Minnesota geography, we got the, Minneapolis, St. Paul, very big, very urban metro, but my practice is statewide. And so for folks looking and they see that I'm not in Minneapolis, they actually prefer that because they don't want to go downtown, even though I don't offer in person. And I make that pretty clear at the very beginning before we get anybody signed up that in order to serve everybody really well, we don't do in-person appointments except for in very rare circumstances. And so, but that is attracted to them, that city that's not St. Paul or Minneapolis. So that helps too.
I think of that one off chance that they might need to meet you. They don't want to drive downtown.
Yeah, exactly. And they like having an attorney that feels like it's in their community.
Right. So let's jump over to law moms. Mm-hmm. So, we've talked a lot about your business. I think you've given a lot of great information as far as helping new people and what they should think about in starting their firm. But I saw on Amazon, Law Moms is a great book by Point Taken Books. Tell us a little bit about that and how that project came about.
Yeah. So Law Moms was it was something we did. It came out in the spring last year. I've kind of had a year, and ever since I started the firm, I feel like I've gotten more brave, or I'm more comfortable with being uncomfortable. I really if I feel scared of something, I'm going to do it because that just feels like an area of growth. So I was approached by someone who I knew through the Lawyerist Lab. We had worked together. We were both kind of working on our firms in the same way and made great connection. And she said, I think you would be really perfect for this. I'm doing a chapter in this book and do you want to try it? And I was like, no, like I have no designs on being a writer or an author, and who's going to care what I have to say and what would I even talk about? I mean, I have a lot of feelings I'm really passionate about, especially women in the law and making the practice of law easier and better. I think that women, especially when they become mothers, suffer more penalties and have a harder time being successful in their careers, or you just need to sacrifice yourself in order to do it. And so I do feel really passionately about that stuff, but like what kind of experience or education makes me an authority on that? And so I was very cautious and reticent. And then when I found out a little more about it, they were like, yeah, we're going to start like the week of Thanksgiving. And I'm like, what? Why would we start like this book for professionals and mothers like in the holiday season? That seems like the worst time of year to do it. But then I remember thinking to myself, well, what if I could suggest a time frame for this like 6-week process? What would that look like? And there are no good times of year when you're a parent and also like a working professional. Everything's busy all the time. Mm-hmm. So I kind of leaned in, and Sulit Press, who does the books, did a really great job. They offer coaching. They kind of hold your hand through the whole process. So I really looked at it as an investment. I can try it, and if I fail, whatever. And then I can try this kind of new cool flex with training wheels, because I'm not responsible for doing any of the publishing and like that. They handhold you through all of that.
You're
stuff.
a published author without all the accoutrements.
So all I had to do, which turned out to be harder than I thought, was come up with something to talk about and then write it. I had a lot of ideas right away. Like I said, I'm really passionate about women in the law, and especially motherhood and the impact that has on your career, having gone through what I did and stepping away from work. I thought I had something to say about that people could relate to. I had like 7 or 8 things on my list. And then the one that was the scariest to me was writing about my relationship with alcohol and why I stopped drinking and the impact that had both on parenting and my career. And that was scary for me. I'm very open about it because I think, I know, and we know from the, National Task Force on Lawyer Wellbeing, that we have like a crisis of mental health and substance use in our profession. And it is scary and it is dangerous, right? There are people losing their lives because they can't manage, and so I knew that it would be important. And so I've always been like, since I quit drinking, I've always tried to normalize that for people and try to make it easier for other, the next person who might need to make that choice for themselves too. And I had even spoken about it in sort of a informal capacity, did some advocacy through the state bar. I always mention it when I'm talking to groups of law students, because there's a huge number of law students that are questioning their relationship with alcohol or struggling with alcohol use and substance use. So I definitely am out there about it, but I had never been so candid about that last time that I drank and what really was enough for me. And I was really afraid. A lot of the same reasons that I was afraid to give up alcohol at all was like, what are people going to think? And what if they judge me? And, all those kind of fears. And so a lot of that came back in a really ugly way when I was sitting down to write this, that was unexpected for me. And I was still carrying so much shame that I didn't even realize was still there.
Wow.
And so writing the chapter, I talked to my husband about that kind of last night. I talked to a couple of friends to get their perspective. And then I finally sat down to write it over like past the deadline, probably, like just doing it very last minute and just kind of pounding it out. And if you read the chapter, I really put the readers in like my shoes and then I kind of talk about that night. And then I kind of go back to some of the other things like leaving, working full time, and some of the pressures. And I include some of the stuff about the task force on lawyer wellbeing so that I can kind of explain that this is like not a Sarah problem. It's like a profession problem. And then I really take people through some of that decision-making and my experiences. And it was so cathartic and therapeutic to actually put it out there that I was so, I didn't realize how much I was still carrying in the guilt and the shame from that, and how much of it I was able to let go just by putting that out there. And then the response that I got has been so gratifying. And I think that it's really helping people. And that's what matters to me, you know? Yeah.
You're reaching people. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are some others. So I'm only one chapter. There's 7 other authors, and they're all these women went so just like deep and raw and very, very personal and very authentic. And I'm so proud of that work and the way that we're trying to normalize these things that we keep in the dark, right? I can't handle this. I am struggling. I am not enough. Like all these feelings that we really internalize and feel like no one else must be feeling, or there's something wrong with me because I'm struggling with this. They just put it all out there, and I am just so in awe of that power and that grace and that, desire to make things better for other people. Like I feel so gratified to be in that group, and I'm very proud of that book.
That's excellent. It looked like a great book. I haven't read it yet, but it looked like a great book to grab. It's good to hear. Yeah. This has been absolutely wonderful. I've loved what you've been able to share, and I hope people have gotten some good information about it. If you want to think about one of the biggest takeaways, what do you hope that the listeners take away from this episode?
I hope that people feel seen or can relate to some of the things that I've said. And I hope that if nothing else, that you feel like you can show up as yourself a little bit more in your work, because it's hard to do, because it makes you vulnerable, and that's scary. But my experience has been overwhelmingly extremely positive, and I have attracted clients that want to work with someone like me because of who I am, and that makes it so much better. I tell the law students, and I'll tell, like, this will be the last kind of lesson I put out there for your listeners, but I never hear from attorneys who regret firing clients. I always hear from attorneys that regret hanging on to clients for too long, and then just make sure that the work that you're doing is fulfilling to you, because life is too short. And especially if you have kids and they're young and you're missing things, like it's you'll never regret spending more time with your family.
Fantastic. Now, I know my listeners are probably going to want to connect with you. Where would be the best place for our listeners to connect with you?
Our website sends us an email that gets right to me or right to my assistant, Aki. So if you go to disabilitylawmn.com, that is probably the best way to find us. But you can reach out to us on Instagram or Facebook as well. The MN Disability Lawyer, I think, is our Instagram handle. So, yeah.
Okay. And I'll include that in the show notes for us. So thank you so much again. This has been a great conversation. I know that we've gotten a lot of great tidbits here, and I hope everybody enjoys today. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for reaching out. I'm super happy to be here, and you're awesome. I love what you're doing. I love the podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today for this episode. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do 2 things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, you can connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take the next step with a digital strategist to help you grow your law firm, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to lawmarketingzone.com to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, thanks for listening to Leadership in Law Podcast, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Leadership in Law Podcast. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of law firm owners out there facing similar challenges and striving for the same success. Head over to our website at lawmarketingzone.com. From there, connect with other listeners, access valuable resources, and stay up to date on the latest episodes. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, keep leading with vision and keep growing your firm.